He risked his life to save 4 Apache women in the burning deserts of Arizona. But one of them gave him something far deeper than gratitude, her heart. Watch this unforgettable tale of courage, love, and destiny, the cowboy and the Apache woman. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more Wild West love stories. Under the scorching Arizona sun of 1874, the desert stretched endlessly, golden, silent, and cruel. Heat shimmered across the canyon trails where a lone rider moved like a shadow against the light. His name was Ethan Cole, a cowboy known more for his solitude than his words. The rhythmic clop of his horse's hooves echoed against the stone until a faint cry broke the stillness. He froze, scanning the horizon. There it was again, a weak, desperate voice carried by the wind. Instinct took hold. He spurred his horse forward, heart pounding. When he reached a small clearing, the sight before him made his blood run cold. 4 Apache women were bound to the splintered remains of a wagon, their skin blistered by the sun, their lips cracked with thirst. Above them, vultures circled lazily, waiting for death to finish what cruelty had begun. Ethan leapt from his horse, rifle in hand, eyes sweeping the desert for an ambush. The stillness was heavy, but danger always hid in quiet places. Raising one hand to show peace, he spoke softly, "Easy now." One by one, he cut the ropes. The women flinched at his touch, too weak to resist. Their captors were long gone, leaving only the stench of dust and despair. From his saddlebag, he offered his canteen. The youngest woman hesitated, then drank deeply. The others followed, trembling hands clutching the metal flask like salvation. Ethan didn't move until each of them had water. They were too weak to walk far, so he built a small fire under a boulder's shade, gave them dried meat, and tore strips from his shirt to bandage their wounds. They spoke little, whispering in Apache, their eyes wary. Cowboys and Apaches were rarely allies, but something inside Ethan told him he couldn't ride away. As the sun lowered, he noticed one woman watching the distant ridge. Her name, he would later learn, was Nayara. Her gaze carried strength even through exhaustion. When the wind shifted, she whispered in broken English, "They come back." Ethan's stomach tightened. He grabbed his rifle just as the faint thunder of hooves rolled through the canyon. 6 riders appeared, raiders, the same men who had left the women to die. He could flee. Instead, he found cover behind a rock, loading his rifle with calm hands. "Stay low," he told the women. The first shot cracked through the desert like thunder. One raider fell. The others scattered, firing back. Bullets ripped the sand near his boots. A searing pain sliced through his arm. He gritted his teeth, kept firing, and didn't stop until the last man hit the dust. Silence returned, broken only by the whine of the wind. Ethan dropped to his knees, blood dripping from his sleeve. The women ran to him. Nayara pressed a cloth to his wound, her hands steady. "You help us," she said softly. "Now I help you." As the sun sank behind the red cliffs, the desert turned gold and crimson. Ethan sat against a rock, half conscious, while the women gathered what little remained of their supplies. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. That night, the desert grew cold. Stars blanketed the sky like scattered diamonds. Ethan lay near the fire, arm bandaged, while Nayara sat beside him, feeding the flames. Every time he opened his eyes, she was there, quiet, graceful, watching him not with fear, but with something gentler. Gratitude. Maybe more. He didn't know it then, but the bond born in that canyon would follow him for the rest of his life. When Ethan awoke, he was no longer in the desert but inside a small Apache lodge. The air smelled of smoke and herbs. His wounds were clean and wrapped. For a long moment, he didn't remember how he'd come here, until he saw her. Nayara sat by the fire, grinding herbs in a bowl. When she noticed him awake, she smiled faintly. "You live," she whispered. He tried to thank her, but his voice cracked. She offered water instead, lifting it carefully to his lips. Over the next few days, he grew stronger. The Apache camp was small and hidden between red cliffs and dry riverbeds. Children played barefoot in the dust. Elders watched silently. Though many looked at him with suspicion, no one threatened him. Nayara had told them what he'd done, how he'd risked his life to save her and the others. Gratitude ran deep among her people. One old man placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder and spoke words he couldn't understand but somehow felt: respect. That evening, Nayara brought him a bowl of rabbit stew. The firelight danced across her face, revealing a quiet beauty touched by sorrow. She told him, in broken English, how her tribe had been attacked by raiders who sold captives near the border. She and her sisters had escaped only to be abandoned in the desert. "We thought spirits take us," she said softly, eyes lost in the flames. "Then you came." Ethan looked away, uncomfortable. Anyone would have done the same. She shook her head. "No, many ride past. You stop." That truth settled between them like the fire, steady, undeniable. Days turned into weeks. Ethan helped around the camp, fixing fences, hauling water, training young boys to handle horses. Kindness became his language. Nayara often watched him from afar, her expression unreadable. When he caught her gaze, she'd look away, but always with the faintest smile. At night, they'd sit by the fire, sharing stories through gestures and laughter. One evening, she handed him a small carved token made of bone, an Apache charm for protection. "For you," she said. He turned it in his palm. "Why me?" Her answer was soft as wind. "Because you have a brave heart. And a lonely one." He didn't reply, but she had seen through him more clearly than anyone ever had. Their bond deepened quietly, like roots beneath dry earth. Nayara taught him Apache words, the names of stars, rivers, and flowers that bloomed only after rain. He taught her how to saddle a horse, read tracks, and shoot straight. They laughed often, brief, tender moments that made the harsh desert almost kind. But beneath every smile lingered the truth. He didn't belong here. He was a drifter, a ranch hand, a man without a tribe. She belonged to her people, bound to their ways and land. Yet when she looked at him, he felt a peace he'd never known. Sometimes at dawn, he'd find her standing on the cliff's edge, watching the sunrise. Her hair caught the light like fire. In those moments, she looked like the soul of the desert itself, strong, untamed, eternal. When the day finally came for Ethan to leave, the camp felt heavy with silence. He saddled his horse slowly, every motion deliberate, delaying the inevitable. Nayara approached, her eyes glistening. "You go?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "I have to. The ranchers back east, they'll think I'm dead." She was silent for a long time, then said softly, "The desert remember you." He smiled faintly. "And I'll remember it." He paused. "And you?" The space between them filled with everything they couldn't say, the barriers of language, duty, and the world itself. Then, before he could turn away, she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. "You saved our lives," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But you also took my heart." Ethan froze. His breath caught somewhere between joy and pain. Tears shimmered in her eyes, and he wanted to tell her how much her words meant, but no words were enough. He placed his hand over hers, holding it for a heartbeat. "If things were different," he began, but the words died in the dry wind. They both knew love like theirs had no place in this world. Nayara stepped back, her gaze steady though her voice broke. "Go," she said. "Before heart make you stay." Ethan mounted his horse. Around his neck hung the carved token she'd given him. He turned one last time. She stood tall in the fading light, the wind tangling her hair. He lifted his hat in silent farewell, and she raised her hand in return. Then he rode away, each hoofbeat carrying him farther from her camp, but never from her memory. The sun dipped low, bleeding gold and crimson across the sky. The desert stretched wide and empty before him, yet it no longer felt lonely. Somewhere behind him, in that vast land of sand and stone, a part of his heart remained. When he reached the ridge, he looked back. For an instant, he thought he saw her, standing alone against the firelight, watching him go. He smiled through the ache. The wind whispered through the canyon, and in it, he heard her voice, soft, haunting, eternal. Some rescues, he realized, save more than lives. They awakened something deeper. And though their paths had parted, her love would echo within him forever.